Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Chapter 1004, Crab Stew. And attacked by more crabs is exactly what happened. Before the soup was even ready, they already had crabs coming from 3 different directions, and Kara was out hunting them. She had realized that the creatures had a fatal flaw. The actual brain was right between the eyes and behind one of the least armored portions of their body. The trick was to get past the claws, as they would guard their vulnerable frontal area as they charged. You couldn't attack it from the top, as most would try, and you couldn't attack from below if you were smaller than the crab. You had to attack it from the front and straight inwards to get a clean hit. But with a bit of practice, she learned to taunt them into snapping their pincers at her, and that revealed the soft spot for her to hit them with a void blast. She definitely didn't want to damage them too badly. These shells were Overlord-ranked chitin. Compared to most materials, they were exceptionally durable and light for the amount of protection that they offered. It might not be as good as some of the special Overlord-ranked metals, but Kara was pretty sure that Ray could make some really awesome armor and trinkets out of crab bits. All they had to do was have crab for dinner for a few days, and Ray would have all the materials that she could need to make entire suits of armor. Wouldn't that be cool? They could make it a shop specialty, as it would layer so well in the traditional Drod armor style. Oh, that would look good on the Dana. They should make her new armor. I made her armor a month ago. Ray reminded the badger. That's working armor, not decorative armor. Kara replied haughtily. Ray paused. The badger was right. It was working armor. She could make it look so much cooler if she wasn't worried about function. If she went all out on the decoration, Dana would become a walking billboard for her armoring skills. She could have a limited edition Samurai Dana. She was already getting properly stabby with that increased attack speed, and Ray was proud of her squishy little human sister. She had even made her golems competent with a sword, and that was a real accomplishment. Ray's golems were pretty good, but they were still lacking on the skills front. The Spectral Knights, on the other hand, had excellent skills. They should teach the Dana Mage how to summon those. Ray mentally nudged Carl, reminding him that he should be more generous with the skills. Target incompatible with skill? Undead army. Boo this system. Ray complained. A whole army of undead knights fighting in front of Dana would be wonderful, especially after Ray made her some new decorative Lady General armor. Is combat a cosplay competition of sorts? Tian asked curiously. Wasn't it always? Beating up bullies and bad people is only properly satisfying when you look cool doing it. Ray insisted. The little fox nodded, accepting the words of his older sister as gospel truth. Tian began to brush out his tail. A properly groomed tail was essential to looking impressive, and he might need to be ready at any moment. The fact that he weighed all of 1 kilogram and was far too adorable to intimidate anyone never crossed his mind. Carl considered his failure for a few minutes. Maybe there was a way that he could fix that skill? Dana couldn't use Bodyguard or Army of the Dead, but she was good with golems. If he mixed the skills for Golem and Army of the Dead, wouldn't that make something like an army of golems? Of course, the 2 spells had very little in common. Other than that, it made a solid construct as a final result, so mixing them wasn't going to be easy. But they had some time, and Carl could work at it slowly while resting and during travel time. The crab stew turned out to be a huge hit with everyone, but the portion sizes were a bit ridiculous for such a small group. In order to hold the full crab as they wanted, the pot held nearly 400 liters of stew. So, after the 6 of them, plus the beasts, had managed to eat most of a single crab leg between them, Tessa packed everything, including the new pot, into her inventory for later. Ray stretched out and then got to her feet. Are you staying here for the night? I am going to go hunt more crabs for later. Hawk and Kara are already at it again, and I don't want to let them win. Then she transformed and vanished into the distance with Shadow Step. Carl would tell her the answer when they had one. Lotus laughed at her impatience and shrugged. This is as good of a spot as any. If we leave the golems and some bodyguards on watch, we can just rest in the tiny world. Just put the entrance inside a simple tent, and nobody will ever know that it's not the bodyguards' camp. Carl nodded. There is a nice simple tent in my inventory, but I have a better plan. If you ask the lovely Tian, I bet he wouldn't mind making us a shelter. Carl brought Tian out of his space, and Lotus' hands began flapping in restrained excitement, or the restrained urge to simply grab the fluffy creature. Mr. Tion, will you make us a shelter for the night? That would be so kind of you. I've got special treats. Do you like peaches? I made peach cobbler squares before we left. Lotus blurted in a rush, while the tiny fox laughed. Tion nodded in agreement. He could make a den for everyone, but an above-ground one the way that other species did it. A flick of his tail created a dome-roofed circular hut of sandstone with an arched door and a single window. It had a stone sleeping bench on one side, up off the ground, so that bugs didn't bother you, and the thick stone walls would keep the afternoon sun off you, while keeping the hut warm all night. Lotus hung a hastily conjured grass mat over the door, and then a covering for the window. Now it looked like someone lived in it. Then, she held out her hands, one with the peach cobbler square on a small plate, clearly luring Tion back to her. But he didn't mind. As much as he had complained about it, the little fox actually enjoyed having someone stroke his fur. Chapter 1005. Combined Advantage. Carl called the Lamia bodyguards, and Dana brought back her golems as additional guards. That should slow down anything that might consider attacking them in the dark. With a pair of totem-ranked Lamia at the hut, they were likely to be the strongest things in the area. You look like you've got big plans for the night, Dana noted as she led Carl to the reproduction of their bedroom in the tiny world's house. Ray pointed out that if you could use her spectral knights, you would have a whole army of master blade wielders to fight on your side. But you're incompatible with the necromantic magic. So, I was thinking of something more like a terracotta army. A complement to your existing golems and greater golems. Dana smiled. I have a skill in my skill tree that is along those lines, but not quite as impressive. It's called Blade Spirits, and it will advance my Blade Swarm skill to pick targets on its own with ethereal spirits. I'm only a few points short of being able to use it. Carl frowned. Isn't that one attack per conjured blade, though? Dana giggled softly and rolled her eyes at him. Even skills from an advanced class aren't intended to be everything you could ever want all in one package. Sure, I'd have to call more of them once they attacked, but that's still a massive amount of damage. Plus, I can leave the blade swarm in place until I'm ready to counterattack, and auto-parry will let them block incoming attacks. That's hard on the mana usage. But if we're being attacked by multiple enemies, I can continually control the blades on my own to keep them away. It's a failsafe in combat since I'm usually the closest to Lotus. That isn't the biggest issue we have right now, though, is it? You're 2 full ranks above the rest of us except Naksha. And given whatever happened to your constitution, you might as well be considered halfway to Mythic already. There isn't any realistic chance that we're going to be able to fight in one cohesive group for much longer. Once the beasts start to advance, we will be totally left behind, and operating as 2 different groups who happen to be in one spot. Carl picked her up and then flopped back onto the bed. You're right. I didn't get to go into details, but while we were apart, I was attacked by a group of mercenaries, who had taken up a bounty placed by Lord Bomgan. A full raiding group of totems. 10 to be specific. And if they hadn't run away to save their surviving members after I killed the healer, it would likely have been a draw. Sure, they weren't anything particularly impressive, and they all used death magic. But if I had Ray and Kara at totem rank with me, it would have been a massacre. I don't want to separate like that, though. There has to be something that I can do that will bring our power levels closer together again so that we can keep traveling and adventuring together. Dana gave him a sad smile. And that's why you're trying to come up with overpowered new spells. So that if I can make it to Overlord rank, I will be so far beyond the average that I won't feel like I'm holding you back. I appreciate it, but I'm being realistic. It won't be long before it's simply impossible for me to keep up. I've known since we started at the academy that you were going to leave everyone in the dust eventually. Look at the head start that you got on everyone else. But I'm savoring the time that we can work together. Even after that time passes, I'll still be there for you to come home to. Dana snuggled into his chest, and Carl wisely kept silent about the fact that he had completely overlooked her feelings on the matter in his excitement. Instead, he swapped to his silk sleepwear and pulled the blankets over them. Dana might have come to terms with the reality that even after her class advancement, she wasn't going to be able to make up the gap in their power levels. But Carl had not. What was the purpose of all these skills he had if he couldn't empower one Dana mage to keep up with his team? So, while they rested in each other's arms, he wasn't just meditating on adding power to the 9-pointed power matrix which enhanced his own abilities. He kept a portion of his mind focused on working on ways to combine the clauses of the golem and undead army spells. But, as morning approached, he found that they were still too different. So, he added bodyguard to the mix, allowing its clauses on intelligence and autonomy to fill in the missing areas. That was almost there, but there were still some requirements that weren't being met. Then Carl remembered when he had tried to combine Ghostfire Body, Night Haunter and Apocalypse, among other skills. It had created a transformation skill called Lord of Destruction. It was a totem rank transformation skill that he couldn't use at the time, but he had the memory of the attempt. There should be something in there that he could use. Spell combination successful. Army of Unholy Retribution Immortal Ranked Skill. No compatible users found. Carl stared at the message. If they could use all the component spells, why couldn't they use that spell? Was there something missing? Other than the fact that none of them were at the immortal rank. Maybe if he started lower? Combining advanced skills tended to have incredibly high requirements. The better the skill was to start with, the more powerful the components needed to improve it, and the more powerful the user needed to be. Carl took a moment to consider his next step, then decided to teach Hawk Lord of Destruction and call it a night. He could work on how to improve Dana tomorrow. Maybe he would come up with a new approach to improving either her power or her growth rate in the morning. The skill created, Lord of Destruction Totem Rank Transformation Skill. Ignores most damage types, incorporeal, deals fire damage to both physical and metaphysical targets. Chapter 1006, Lord of the Hawks. Hawk cheered as he hunted crabs in the dark. His flames burst out in bright white flames, leaving only a light blue afterimage of his feathers at the core, and then his fire attacks advanced from Overlord to Totem Ranked. It might not have been his own effort that advanced his flames before his body, but winning was winning. He was the second to have a Totem Ranked skill. Well, third if you counted Tion, but Tion was too cute to count as a combatant. Their newest addition was already having a significant effect on the others as well. Hawk had noticed that Thor was feeling extra protective with a hatchling in the group, and Remy spent all her time outside her lab in a greatly reduced version of her spirit snake form. He wasn't sure whether turning back into a small spirit snake actually made her cuter, but Remy was quite certain that it did. It didn't affect her spell-casting abilities in any way, so Hawk mostly ignored it. Looking at his transformed body, Hawk realized that he still looked like himself, only with hotter flames on the outside. But when he dove to attack a crab for a close-range flaming rend, he could pass through tree branches, as if he were made of pure fire. Of course, that set the scraggly little tree on fire. But that was a minor side effect. The real concern was that he couldn't grab the crabs in this form without using a skill. That part was annoying. The damage was still so worth it. He called it a night just an hour after Carl got him the new skill. It was already getting close to morning, and he needed more sleep than Ray did. So, if he didn't sleep now, he wouldn't be able to keep up with his scouting duties after breakfast. Even Kara and Ray eventually returned to their spaces to sleep. They had collected so many of the crabs that they had to actually search for more at that point, and the rest of the group still needed something to do tomorrow. Lotus woke everyone up with the smell of blueberry pancakes coming from the kitchen, and the team gathered to make their plan for the day. Should we go look for the core of the anomaly to see if there are good things? Or should we clear out all the crabs we can find first and see if it collapses? Philia asked. She knew that the beasts had been hunting in the dark, so there should be hundreds of crabs in storage by now. Speaking of which, can we still reach the guild store? Tessa asked. Lotus shook her head. I had to make my own ingredients today. We're out of range of the guild store. But we can put things in the main guild bank and let them collect them. Carl shrugged. We can also open a portal back. Just let me know when we need to get something. Or ask Dana. Lotus smirked. I have come prepared. Plus, with this class advancement I have incredible nature magic. We don't need to worry about plant-based ingredients. I've got nearly a month's worth of average potion sales stocked at the store as well. No need to rush back. Remy added silently. She was back in Lamia form to eat breakfast, but Carl noticed that she was still using unobtrusive behemoth to shrink herself. The fork and knife were huge in her hands, but the greedy look that she was giving pieces of pancake which were each the size of her head was hilarious. Carl checked the system interface, and found that they were now in range of the Saihosesa guild house, though he didn't have access to its guild bank. That proximity was likely what gave them the link to the main guild bank, so as it was in the northern corner of this island, they should be good over the whole island if they really needed to move things. But now that he thought about it, he could make totem-ranked items. He hadn't had a chance to make any totem-ranked runic items yet. There wasn't really anything that they needed, but he was curious what totem-ranked runes looked like. They had gone through metallic, then purple, red, and a greenish-blue color that seemed to shift to one or the other depending on the nature of the effect. He did have a bit of totem-ranked stone to work with thanks to the dwarves trading with him. He didn't have much for creation skills, though. He did have a few Overlord-ranked weapons in his inventory. They were the ones that he was going to make for Oathbreaker to sell at the auction this month. They were Overlord-ranked, or so it should be able to handle totem-ranked runes. Lord Drod was going to lose his mind. You look suspiciously happy. Dana noted. I just realized that I have a sword here for the auction that I haven't upgraded yet. Dana smirked and winked at him. And now you can imbue it with totem-ranked runes. Well, let's see it. I think we're all interested now. Carl took out the greatsword and placed it on the table to plan what he would do. It had a place for a gem in the pommel so he could add a skill stone to it. The others looked at the weapon on the table, wondering what sort of warrior it would be targeted to. It didn't suit Dana's style, and Ophelia had a nearly new pair of axes. Carl thought about it for a moment, then decided not to troll the auction house that badly. He would make it for himself in case he needed more reach in combat than the Blade of Champions allowed. The Epic Guard was quite fond of the Haint Claw, and it was using it more often recently. That didn't cost Carl anything, as he still got the soul energy feed from the weapon even when the Epic Guard used it. So, a backup sword for fighting larger targets would be alright. If he put Life Leech and Shatter-type runes on the blade, along with increased skill damage and durability runes, that would make a good base. Then the gem could be Gravity Slam, so that he could counter much larger and heavier weapons. Carl took out a totem-ranked Earthstone to carve the spell, then got to work on the blade. Only when they were both finished and the gem was mounted did Carl begin to add the mana to upgrade the runes. The change in his power level was obvious as the runes rapidly flickered through the colors as they improved, a nearly effortless process on Carl's part. The runes turned from red to blue, and then the light seemed to be sucked out of the room as the runes went pitch black. Carl stopped as the rune's power level equalized with his own, and admired his handiwork. The gem had turned entirely black, hiding the runic writing. But the blade remained the same shimmering silver of elven steel, but engraved with delicate black lines, thanks to the tiny writing necessary to get all the effects that Carl wanted without writing too close to the edges of the blade. Achievement obtained: Craft a totem-ranked runic item. Title awarded: Rune Lord. Chapter 1007, Haint. Carl picked up the blade, and immediately felt the resistance from the Blade of Champions. It had been some time since he tried to use another weapon, and he had totally forgotten that the blade was actually intensely territorial. With its effect, Carl wasn't sure that he could properly bond the weapon at all. Everyone waited, wondering what Carl was doing, and not privy to the silent objections of the Blade of Champions. After a few seconds, Carl relented. It seems that I offended my other sword. I will have to find a proper home for this one later, he explained. Dana gave him a strange look. How do you offend a sword? Attempt to cheat on it with another sword? One with a longer blade and a fancy skill stone. Carl replied with a shrug. Dana resisted the urge to facepalm as Carl took out the Blade of Champions, which now pulsed with totem rank power, as if staking its claim. Didn't it let you use the maul without any issues, though? Tessa asked. Carl nodded. Yes, the maul wasn't an issue. Just swords, as far as I can tell. I guess I'll just have to work on a skill to improve my one-handed blade work. Or maybe learn to fight with a shield. Ray can make you an excellent crab shield. Well, once she's done with the one that she's making for whatever she's doing, Kara suggested. Ray looked up from her sketchbook. That one is just for art. It's not for function. It was part of her new decorative line of equipment. She had already planned out the whole set for Dana, and now she was just waiting on the proper method to dye the shell portions black. She had plenty of reds, but she wanted them to be glossy black to go with the stripes in the fur of Carl's beast form. She could paint it, but that just wasn't the same as properly dyeing the shell so that it was the right color all the way through, and the looks couldn't be chipped away. It took a few more minutes of searching her memory of leatherworking skills, but she eventually came up with a plan that would work on orange chitin, and began formulating the dye to make properly black shields out of the crab shells. While Ray worked on plans to make new armor, Carl set out his assortment of weapons on the table, so he could form a plan to create something to fill the gaps in his abilities. Looking at them all side by side was easier for Carl to compare than just going over the system interface, but it really did highlight how far he had come since acquiring them all. A single moderately powered attack would cause the formerly prodigious weapon to explode now. He should likely put it on display somewhere or see if he could release the bond and trade it to someone less powerful. Out of habit, the Epic Guard picked up the Haint Claw and let it equip over her hands. Then the whole body, which transformed the Black Drake scaled construct to a ghost body tray ant nearly identical to Overlord Lifa. For a moment, the guard looked at the two less used weapons, and then picked them up. It looked hilarious, as both weapons were designed to be wielded with both hands, and the Epic Guard was smaller than Carl by quite a bit. Lotus smiled at the semi-intelligent construct. Did you want them? She asked. The construct nodded and Carl shrugged. I don't see why not. But be careful trying to actually use them all. It can't handle Overlord rank power, and even Monarch rank is pushing its limitations. The Epic Guard nodded happily. Then both weapons simply melted into its body. What the hell was that? Dana exclaimed, while the Epic Guard strutted around proudly. Weapon upgraded. Haint Claw has become Haint. The Epic Guard seemed to split, and the original body stepped back, leaving the Lifa copy, in all her ghostly glory, standing in front. Living weapon. Haint artifact grade living weapon. Soul Steel, Soul Link, Spirit Shift, Teleport, Life Steal, Force Slam, Ghost Fire, deals extra damage when merged with a construct or wielder. Everyone stared in shock for a moment. Then the haint vanished. It reappeared behind Lotus, and picked the little cleric up in a princess carry, so it could pet her with its hair branches. Ha! The tables have turned. Tion laughed as he came out to watch the show. The epic guard smirked at the show. Without the haint, its intelligence wasn't nearly as high, but it was well aware of Lotus' love for all things plant and animal. Well, that's one way to deal with excess weapons. But I must say that creating a second Lifa was not what I had on the bingo sheet for today. Tessa joked. The haint smiled at her. Who is Lifa? She asked. Oh, that's the haint that broke off a bit of its own hand to make the haint claw that you evolved from. She named herself Lifa because she looked like an ethereal tree-ant. Tessa explained. The haint nodded slowly. Interesting. I would say that we look more like a tree revenant. But perhaps she wanted to be seen as a friendly creature. Did you not want to be known as friendly? Tessa asked carefully. The haint shrugged. I am Pack Master Carl's weapon. Whether my presence is friendly or not depends on his mood. This living weapon didn't have the rebellious spirit that Lifa had, Tessa realized. It still respected the bond with its wielder, and didn't have any inclination to rebel against his authority or go off on its own. Perhaps that would come with age, but for now, they probably didn't need to worry about a rebellion. I wonder if it kept its combat instincts. Kara wondered. The haint turned to face her. Indeed, I learned much about combat as I grew, including the first lesson that you taught me. Gouge out the eyes and then claw off the delicate bits. She can hear me. Kara cheered, and did a little happy dance on her hind legs. I can hear what Carl hears, so I hear everything. Lotus poked the ghostly-looking body of the haint, and found that it was actually warm and squishy. Can you put me down now? Chapter 1008 New Use for Old Skills. A brave crab approached the camp, and the haint extended on hand, then made a rapid up and down gesture that lifted the creature, then slammed it to the ground. Thor's eyes opened wide. That was a brilliant use of gravity slam. It only took him a moment to realize that the skill had evolved, and that her version was called Force Slam, but it only took a nudge to get Carl to transfer the altered spell. Pass that one all around, Kara complained. Skill transferred. Force Slam. Skill transferred. Force Slam. Target incompatible. Target incompatible. Well, at least I got it. Sorry about everyone else's luck. Kara gloated as the rest of the team except her and Thor proved incompatible with the gravity magic. As he watched the haint methodically disassemble the giant crab, Carl realized that most species would be horribly adapted to trying to defend against that skill. Not many were evolved to keeping themselves attached to a surface. That was what gravity was for. But when gravity was reversed, and you were suddenly lifted, most targets would be nearly helpless unless they could resist the skill directly. Carl assumed that at higher levels some magic resistance was normal. He wasn't sure if he had any, but it was likely in the system stats somewhere, if he went searching through the options. Should we go look for the rest of the crabs now? I know that Ray and the others cleared out a lot of them last night, but we should look for the source anomaly and clear the remainder of them from the area. Carl suggested. The haint put Lotus down and stretched her clawed fingers, ready to go hunting. Why don't you take your new friend and go look for the anomaly, and the rest of the team can go hunt crabs together? Dana suggested. That would leave them with plenty of protection, and Carl wouldn't have to be bored all day, facing monsters that he could kill a whole group at a time with a single strike. Carl thought about arguing, but if there was an instance of some sort at the anomaly that spawned the crabs, then it would be the final requirement for him to do his class advancement. Requirements for next class advancement. Reach totem rank. Fill all beast slots or combine spaces to remove redundant areas. Visit any dungeon, instance, or relic with system integration. He had reached totem rank. He hadn't started to form a new space yet for a totem-ranked pet, and if there was something in the anomaly, it would be the final requirement. Fortunately, Carl already knew exactly where he had to go. Hawk had done extensive scouting of the area yesterday, so everyone knew where the remaining groups of crabs should be. But it also revealed the anomaly that spawned them, which would be Carl's target for the morning. Unlike most spawns, there was no guard around the entrance. Ogres and giants would remain there, as well as most other monster species. But the crabs had just wandered away, looking for food. So, Carl stepped inside without any challenge, and felt a brief sense of disorientation as the world twisted. Remy would love this place, Carl decided. It was a large swamp with a sandy beach and a large open ocean, plus one small island with a stone temple on it. Perfect home for Naga. But as far as Carl could tell, there was nothing here. Using swim through air, he moved above the water surface to check for signs of life. The crab nests were here, some with eggs in them, but there were no signs of anything alive. Even the eggs in the nests were either dormant or unfertilized. So, Carl opened his system interface and found himself pulled into the familiar class change option screen. Welcome, Enlightened user Carl. The system message floating in the air in front of him greeted. Please select a class. Carl looked at the options, then did a double take. There were no normal class options this time. Everything was a strange and unique sounding progression. They also came in multiple ranks. 3 had blue rings under them, 2 had purple, and 1 shone with golden light. Starting with the blue, which were likely the lowest ranked option, Carl began to read the options. Beast Lord, a rounded combat class that specializes in joining their beasts in combat. Class skill. Rampaging Beast transforms the Beast Lord into animal form and doubles the bonus stats gained from their partners. Pack Master Elder trade skill class specialized in raising packs of beasts. Gains multiple bonuses to taming wild beasts and to successful breeding of hybrid species. Class skill. Mystic Husbandry. Allows the Pack Master Elder to increase the chance of successful mating between magical beasts under their influence. Pack Guardian, a defensive specialist class. Gains multiple bonuses to defense and regeneration. Class skill. Invulnerable Pack grants the greater immunity effect to all bonded beasts as well as the Pack Guardian. Carl nodded as he read through the options. Each of them was good, though not ridiculous. But they were also the least shiny of the options. Kara would approve of this method of sorting. The more rare they were, the shinier they got. It was definitely a Badger-approved method, and even Hawk would immediately understand the meaning of this sorting method. So Carl moved on to the class avatars that had purple rings under them. Pack Master Destroyer, a brutal combat class, specialized in wide-scale destruction. Grants bonuses to all stats gained from bonded beasts. Increases damage to area of effect and multiple target spells. Deals increased damage to structures and fortifications. Class skill. Bring the Pack. Doubles the destroyer's number of available beast spaces, and the growth rate of beasts resting in their assigned space. Beast Master Patriarch, blessed of the beast gods. A cleric class, specialized in the enhancement of bonded beasts. Class skill. Pack Territory Domain effect. Doubles beast damage within the domain, and increases enemy skill energy requirements by 300%. In his space, Tian laughed. We could be a destroyer, and bring all our friends with us. Nobody would dare to bully us if we had 15 sisters. Why 15 sisters? Carl asked. Sisters are much scarier than brothers. Tian explained as if that should be obvious. His living situation might have been shaping his developing views of society. Ray and Kara were much scarier than Thor and Hawk. Sister Remy is the terrifying one. You should see what her failed potions can do to people. Tian countered. Becoming part of a lab experiment was much more horrifying than being torn apart or pranked to death. That left only one more option. The version of Carl in a casual suit, standing in the golden shining ring of light. Chapter 1009 Champion. Carl examined the final option with his fingers crossed for good luck. Beast Master Champion Avatar Type Class. Blessed by their patron deity, the champion grants a wide variety of skills to their bonded partners, as well as gaining increased strength, an improved mana pool, and growth rate bonuses. Class Skill 1, Bestial Champion Passive Skill. Doubles the applied effect of all buffs cast by the champion on himself or his bonded partners. Class Skill 2, Avatar Transformation Skill. The Beast Master Champion transforms into the incarnation of the wrath of their patron deity, and gains a corresponding bonus, based on the nature of the patron. Class Skill 3, Ascendant Divinity Passive Skill. The Beast Master Champion's soul power increases at an improved rate, based on the progression of their power matrix. Fundamental rule comprehension increases with soul power. Carl read the final class skill again. When he reached totem rank, the system told him that he was compatible with 3 fundamental rules: chaos, fire, and mana manipulation. The problem was that there were no instructions on what exactly that was supposed to be used for. So, he focused on the newly improved Ghostfire skill, and then on the fundamental rule of fire. The flames immediately burned a bit hotter, and gained something extra. Carl got the feeling that the extra power from the rule of fire would be nearly impossible to resist, as if the world was being bent to his will. Assuming that he was using the power correctly, that comprehension should be the difference between powerful and overwhelming force. There didn't appear to be any downsides to the Beast Master Champion class. It had more class skills, better class skills, and it should be a reliable one for his own progression, with the 3rd class skill constantly improving his power level as he worked on his power matrix. Class chosen, Beast Master Champion. Patron deity detected. World Dragon. Skill bonus confirmed. A avatar while transformed. The avatar of the World Dragon may walk freely anywhere within the World Dragon's influence. Increases resistance to negative statuses that impact movement and thought. Portal spell range limits increased. Carl frowned. That was not the sort of bonus that he thought he would get from the avatar skill. Shouldn't it have been some sort of buff? Well, it was a buff in a way. It increased his resistance to control spells. But with the bonuses being based on freedom of movement suggested that Carl had greatly misunderstood the nature of the world dragon. Was the golden dragon god in charge of the system actually a free spirit? Someone who didn't like to be tied down and loved to travel? That was a hard thing for Carl to comprehend. But after a few seconds of thought, Carl realized that he was most likely thinking about it the wrong way. The movement wasn't the point. Nothing stopped the world dragon from doing as it pleased. The bonuses probably weren't about wanderlust, but the unstoppable nature of the world dragon's will. He would have to test that in the future, but it was the reason that made the most sense to him right now. The class selection menu faded, and Carl realized that he was not alone in the anomaly. There was a single orc in here with him, curiously stabbing him with a pitchfork. "What are you doing?" Carl asked. "Defeating monsters?" The orc asked, clearly confused. "I'm not a dungeon monster. I came in here to trigger a class advancement." The orc tilted his head and stabbed him with the pitchfork again. "Are you sure?" Carl laughed. "When was the last time that a dungeon boss spoke to you? I didn't see you come in because of the system menu screen. Did you come with a group?" The orc nodded. "My clan was traveling this way when we found crabs. They are probably good to eat, so we are working with a bunch of dragon clerics and a behemoth to catch them all." Carl nodded. "They are very good to eat. I am traveling with the impenetrable bulwark behemoth and the others. There should be a black dragon and a ghostfire thunderbird around as well, but they might have flown off together to hunt separately." The orc sighed in relief. If he knew that much about the group, he couldn't be from the dungeon. Good thing too. He had proven immune to the skills used on him when the orcs first entered. Of course, they were all monarchs and overlords, but still, their skills didn't even make a scratch on him. Carl turned and walked out of the anomaly, with the lone orc following him. He could hear the thoughts of the beasts as they hunted and herded the crabs to the others so that everyone had something to fight. The orcs were having a grand time, as there were rarely any chances for them to taste seafood when they lived so far from the ocean. They were still technically in a desert, though not as completely sandy as the region to the south. Just finding any water was difficult. Carl examined a group of crabs in the distance, not yet being herded towards either of the groups. This was the perfect opportunity to try out his new class skills. Well, the only active one of them. Carl took a few long running steps towards the crabs, then activated Avatar, and watched the world shrink beneath him. New information about how to walk on four legs and operate wings entered his mind as the spell completed, and Carl realized that he had missed the most obvious possible answer. Of course, the avatar of a dragon god was a dragon, a rather large one. Curious about his power, Carl swatted a crab with one front paw, and watched as his claws dug deep furrows in the shell without activating any skills at all. The creature went flying, then bounced for a few more rolls across the dry grass. That was way more fun than expected. No playing with your food. Kara laughed as she realized what Carl had done. "I can see why you do it. They fly so well," Carl joked. Chapter 10:10, Orcs and Crabs. Carl punctured the next one, saving the shell in case Ray needed more materials. Then he pinned one down with his tail as the orc gleefully stabbed it with his pitchfork, using cleave to kill it. "Good work." Carl congratulated him, and realized this form could only speak serpent. "Thanks. Is that a skill, or was the other one a skill?" the orc asked. "Both of them are skills, actually. My natural form is much less impressive to look at." Carl laughed. Carl smashed his way through the small group of crabs, then let the orc go to rejoin his clan. It was a good chance to go for a flight in dragon form, and see just how fun it was to fly on your own. Powerful muscles extended enormous golden wings, and a single downward thrust hurled Carl into the sky. With agile flyer from Kara, and swims through air from Remy, flying in dragon form was effortless. On top of that, the knowledge from the avatar skill told him exactly how to work his transformed body, and soon Carl was soaring through the sky, looking for anything that the rest of the group might have missed. Naksha flew over to greet Carl. Once she took a look at his name tag with the system interface and realized that they didn't have another totem-ranked visitor. "Looking good in gold. Did your transformation spell change? I think that Dana will miss the fur." She called over the noise of the wind, which was oddly muffled in dragon form. "No, I managed to update my class, and now I have a second option for transformation. Cat form or dragon form?" Carl called back. Naksha dipped to the side, and Carl followed, chasing the dragon through the air as he got used to moving around on two wings. Hawk came over to fly alongside the others, and to see how Carl did in a winged form. He could kind of fly before, but nothing like he was doing now. The skill turned him into a totem-ranked world dragon, at least in appearance, and he was half again larger than Hawk or Naksha. So, when he opened his wings to soar, Carl floated on the drafts much better than either of them, and his immense strength let him cut and bank every bit as well as the smaller duo. though he did have a habit of losing spatial awareness and ending up upside down after a maneuver. They didn't totally slack off, though. Every minute or so, they would dive down and take out 3 more crabs, just enough that the others couldn't accuse them of just playing around all day. But the orcs weren't fooled. They knew when someone was having fun in battle. Fortunately, they also assumed that the dragons were making an effort not to steal all their potential food supplies, as the team on the ground had already made huge progress. The orcs took that as a sign of kindness, as they were always short on food in the desert, as well as the surrounding grasslands, and mentally noted that these clerics and their companions were friends. When the crabs were nearly all gone, Carl led Naksha and Hawk down to meet with the Orcish chieftain, to say their farewells or make a trade, whichever worked for the chief. But the moment that he landed on the ground, the desert shifted to long savanna grass, and the orcs were gone. "Dana, do you see what I see?" Carl messaged after checking the mental link to the beasts. "We do. Everything just changed around us and the orcs are gone. So are the rest of the crabs, and the anomaly that spawned them." Dana replied quickly. A quick flap of his wings brought Carl halfway over to the others, where he transformed back to his bestial form and jogged the remainder of the distance. "Does anyone have any clue what just happened?" he asked, after verifying that they didn't lose any team members in the event. The time changed. The sun moved back towards morning. Kara informed him, intrigued by the sudden change. "I think it's a time distortion. We weren't targeted for a move through time, so it didn't trigger any of the resistance skills. But the world around us changed to a different point in time." Tessa offered. "Can we message the guild house?" Lotus asked. "Hey, Ashbringer, how are things going in the forge? We're out of the store's bank range, but we can send things to the main guild bank if you need it urgently." Carl asked. "Everything is fine here. I've got enough elven steel to last me for months still, and the sculptors are doing incredibly well. I think that the alchemists might cry soon, though. We just had a caravan come through and ordered 1,000 commander-rank healing potions to be shipped off to the front lines." The demonic blacksmith replied. "Everything seems fine at their end. Ashbringer didn't mention anything about a long absence, and he's not running low on materials yet. So I think that we weren't part of the effect." Carl explained. Remy nodded. "I was talking to the alchemists before and after. Nothing changed in the conversation. I also gave them the recipe for bulk potions so they can make them in the big cauldron instead of 5 potions at a time." Naksha transformed back to human inside. "And now we know why the maps of Gabble are a mess. Nobody knows what the inside of the nation looks like because it has changed over the course of however long these time distortions cover. So, it really is different every time that they send another group in. What I'm more worried about is that we will get trapped in a time loop at some point if we remain. The orcs vanished with the change, and when the next change comes, it might be us vanishing to some other reality." Tessa nodded in agreement. That was a real possibility. Assuming that the events they were part of did just move to another reality, and weren't thrown hundreds or thousands of years into the future. Chapter 10:11. Changed. "Hawk, can you head up and go see what is around us?" Carl requested. They were going to need some information, now that there was a good chance that even the terrain had changed. Things are the same but not. There is still a hill in the same spot, but it's smaller. Then all the low areas are swamps, not desert. Oh, there are Remy people here, too. In a village, I mean. I don't see any wandering monsters, just some food. But some of the food has people watching it. I don't see farmhouses, though. Oh, if we go way to the northwest, I can see an anomaly. Maybe 80 kilometers. Hawk narrated. Hawk says there is an anomaly in the distance, but there are Naga villages closer to us, and the low ground is now a swamp, while the high ground is grassland. Carl explained. The others nodded, and Remy slid over to climb up Carl and stare in his face. "We're going to visit the Naga, right? I haven't gotten to meet a whole village of my people yet," she pleaded. "It's only a few kilometers. I don't see why we can't go visit on our way." Remy cheered as she launched herself off Carl and transformed back into her Naga form. Then she began changing her outfit and her jewelry, intending to look her best when she reached the village. Suddenly, Kara paused, then began to clap. "Oh, this will be fun. I just know it." "Did your foresight show you something in the near future?" Carl asked. "Yep, from today." Kara agreed but did not elaborate. The ladies climbed onto Thor for the trip, while Kara nudged Carl's leg. "Shrink me, so I can sit on your shoulder," she demanded. Unlike Remy, who had understood immediately how to use Thor's new skill, none of the others had gotten the hang of the ability so easily. Carl made her the size of a house cat, and the badger happily settled on his shoulder for the jog. It was only a few kilometers to the village, a trip that Carl and Thor could make in under 10 minutes. But when they got to the edge of the swamp surrounding the village, Remy insisted on getting down to lead them in. "Thor, please lower the barriers. They will think it's rude if we don't let the swamp touch us," she explained. Thor and Carl both lowered their defensive barriers, and then Remy summoned her bodyguards and led them through the swamp, with Ray at her side in spider form. The Naga are going to think that we're all lunatics. Naksha chuckled as she looked over the odd procession. Dana snorted with restrained laughter. I would be more concerned that they might be right. As they approached the village, a group of aging Naga came out to meet them with reverent looks on their faces as they stared at Remy. Shaman Queen, it is our honor to welcome you to the village. Are these your friends? The largest of the Naga asked politely. Indeed, we are on an adventure, out to eliminate the excess monsters caused by the anomalies. Remy agreed. The Naga chieftain smiled at her. You certainly have interesting friends. And such luxury. A shaman queen with her entourage is formidable enough, but to have so many of the dragon gods chosen with you as well. The chief had a point. How many groups were nearly half clerics? In most regions, 2/3 of all system activations were for the warrior class, and mages comprised the majority of the rest. Even in the Naga village, Carl could only spot one curious shaman, standing on her porch to watch the visitors. The rest were all Naga warriors and workers. Have you had problems with specific monsters from the anomalies, or an excess of beasts? Remy asked the chief. The Naga shook his head. Our village has many powerful warriors. But the tribes to the north have had problems with an excessive number of crocolisk beasts coming from an anomaly. We sent them 200 freshly trained juveniles in the spring, and they're still having trouble. Most likely because the crocolisk was much more powerful than a juvenile Naga warrior, Carl assumed. But it would be less dangerous to send a batch of hatchlings instead of their own defensive warriors. Remy nodded and looked to the north. Perhaps we should go see them. We have plenty of combat power. We might be able to clear out the worst of their problem, and possibly even close the anomaly. The chief looked shocked. Close the anomaly? I don't think that is possible. Remy shrugged. All you have to do is kill every monster it spawned, or send a team in to empty the other side of the anomaly. One or the other usually works. The two shook hands, and the chief gestured into the village. Your Highness, would you be interested in staying for a morning meal? Or is your group in a hurry? Remy turned to Carl for a decision, and he nodded. We will thank you for your hospitality. A morning meal before we go hunt crocolisks will never go wrong. Mostly, Remy was interested in what traditional Naga cooking was like. As a species that had evolved to swallow prey whole before they had become intelligent and civilized, it was likely very different from anyone else's. Even Remy, who had grown up with Carl and the others, had different preferences, mostly based on texture, as she didn't have as many taste buds as mammals did. Thor and Ray transformed to humanoids, and the Naga locals gave them suspicious looks. It's a bit inconvenient for a behemoth to stomp through your village. I would make deep spots in the mud. Thor apologized gently. The villagers smiled at his consideration, and let go of some of the innate suspicion of the two-legged species that they held. 2 legs always meant trouble. The only mammals that they trusted not to cause real trouble were the followers of the dragon gods. Chapter 10:12. Let Remy lead the way. Carl motioned for the others to fall back and let Remy and her bodyguard lead the way through the village. A Naga queen was much more important to these people than the rest of the group was, and separating themselves from Naga royalty made them more approachable to the rest of the villagers. Carl noted that the Naga shivered as they crossed from the muddy streets to the stone floors of the buildings, so that they didn't track mud onto the developed areas. So, as the rest of the group took the final step, he briefly pulsed eternal lightning over them, knocking the mud off their boots and pants. The only one he didn't have to compensate for was Dana, who had been using swims through air to walk on top of the water instead of standing in the mud. Even if Remy said that it was better to let the swamp water touch you as a show of courtesy, she wasn't a big fan of walking around for an unknown amount of time with wet feet. The chief led Remy into a large building that looked like a temple, with an enormous carving of a 6-armed Naga woman at one end, while a group of servants led Carl and the others to the building next to it. They weren't really separated in Carl's mind. They were on separate sections of the stone floor, but the buildings had stone pillars holding up the slate roof, and no walls, so he could see what was going on just fine. They were even a few steps higher than the spot where Remy and the elders had gone. It had a thin layer of crystal clear water over the floor, while their spot was dry, with low tables designed either for Naga or for sitting on the floor to eat. Possibly both. Are any of you familiar with traditional Naga cuisine? One of the servants asked quietly. Everyone shook their heads. We from Demon Lands. Carl offered as an explanation. The Naga servant smiled and bobbed her head. If you like demon cooking, you should like Naga cuisine. It also tends to be mildly spicy. A few seconds later, more servants came with platters of what appeared to be sushi rolls. Most of them were slices of raw meat on rice, but there were cooked shrimp, vegetable rolls, and a bowl of stew placed in front of everyone. That dish is a spice paste. You can add it to your preference. The vegetable rolls cleanse the mouth between flavors. It is recommended to eat all of the one type at a time, then switch, unless you want to try a new flavor combination. The servant explained quietly. Carl glanced down at the lower platform, and saw that they all ate with their fingers, so at least he wouldn't have to learn a new type of utensil. Lotus had other ideas and brought out chopsticks for everyone, which seemed to confuse the Naga. To keep your fingers clean, so you don't move the flavor between bites. Lotus happily informed them. That made the servants smile. They rarely got visitors, but visitors who were enthusiastic about trying their food were even more rare. The dwarves didn't understand the appeal of raw meat and fish, while the orcs didn't understand the appeal of food served in small bites. Every roll had 2 to 3 different textures, Carl noticed. They were excellent, with vibrant flavors so that the Naga could actually taste them, but he could tell that they were really designed to be swallowed whole, not chewed. The amount of food was nearly overwhelming, and Carl could see the staff's amusement as the ladies began looking for polite ways to not try the new platter. You can just stop. It's fine, as the staff will eat all the leftovers from a formal dinner. The servant Naga girl whispered. The servers nodded happily, and Carl saw that they had a whole cart full of platters waiting. That was far more than his group could be expected to eat, so they had definitely prepared enough for themselves after the guests had eaten their fill. Remy and the chief's advisors chatted about issues in the swamps and surrounding grasslands. According to them, the largest issue was just the anomaly to the north that was spawning crocolisks, but according to Hawk, that one was a small one with far fewer monsters than the anomaly to the northwest in the grassland. But the anomaly to the northwest was spawning a form of lion monster, and those were unlikely to enter the swamps. Remy and the elders of the village finished their meal, and Remy passed them a few potions as a first meeting gift, and then motioned for everyone to join her on the walkway in front of the buildings. It has been a great pleasure to meet you all today, but as the morning light is burning, we should get going on to help the other villages with their crocolisk issues, she was saying as Carl joined them. Thank you for dining with us, Your Majesty. We look forward to the day when we see you again, and thank you for assisting with the crocolisk infestation. Thor transformed back as they left the village, and Remy led the group north towards the location where Hawk had found a large group of overlord-rank crocolisks. They were a 10-meter-long 6-legged reptile, similar to the common crocodile on a massive scale. Hawk was curious about them, and their powerful water magic mixed with earth magic. When he hurled fireballs at them, they turned the swamp around themselves into thick mud and simply sank out of sight. It was infuriating. Tion thought it was a valid tactic, though. Hiding under the ground when there was a flying, flaming attacker was a good idea. The fact that it was muddy ground was irrelevant to the little stone fur divine fox. After all, he could just use his stone fur ability and shake it all off him when he emerged. Chapter 10:13. Crocolisk. As they approached the next village, a beast that could make a run for the title of mother of all crocolisks emerged from swamp waters that were clearly too shallow to have hidden its body. Compared to the 10-meter bodies that Hawk reported for the others, this one was easily twice that length, and carried a long lifetime of battle scars on its body. A perfect accompaniment to its totem rank status. Then, dozens of snarling beasts emerged from the swamp to surround Carl's group, and Kara began to cheer from her perch on Carl's shoulder. He had totally forgotten that she was still there, reduced in size to more easily spectate. Carl called on the Haint along with his sword, but didn't merge with the weapon yet. Having the Haint and the epic guard surround the massive beast would be more effective than adding a bit more damage to himself. Lotus giggled as the Haint began to splash her feet happily in the water, glad to be out of storage. The beasts briefly paused as golems and bodyguards were called out, and the enemy numbers increased. But only for a few seconds before they launched their attack. The crocolisk matriarch was surprisingly fast, but physically outmatched. Its first strike began with its massive maw opened around Carl, who landed a punch on its nose and stopped its forward momentum before aiming a swing at its neck, leaving a shallow gouge across its throat as the creature retreated. Cunning eyes stared at Carl, assessing his abilities. If it couldn't simply overpower him, this would not be an easy fight. But not one that it didn't believe there was a chance to win. A massive swamp shambler, a mud and vine construct made of the swamp itself, rose from the shallow water and lashed out at Carl with a club as the crocolisk matriarch moved to attack his unarmed side. Carl sidestepped the attack before being distracted by the sound of a monster to his left howling in pain and frustration. Kara had her garrote wire out again, but she wasn't using Void Blast on it. She was standing on the back of a crocolisk, one hand on the thread and riding it like a rodeo bull as the creature thrashed and flailed wildly, trying to dislodge her. Whatever. She would take care of it when she was done. The Haint knocked the crocolisk matriarch up on its hind legs with Force Slam, and the Lamia duo attacked its belly, which was much less armored than its top side. Carl parried the club of the swamp shambler, then hit it with a Nullify spell that caused the golem to disintegrate into a pile of mud and vines. The matriarch twisted impossibly fast and bit one of the Lamia, nearly biting the unfortunate creature in half, but getting attacked on the inside of its mouth for its trouble. The pain made it retreat, and the lamia began to regenerate rapidly. Black mist surrounded its body as lamia blood stained the murky swamp water deep red. Only a few seconds later, it was ready to fight again, and the Crocolisk matriarch still hadn't found another opening to attack past the haint and the other lamia. Carl switched to his bow and put a void blast arrow into the creature's side, blasting away a half-meter divot of flesh and scales. The matriarch howled in pain and frustration, then bellowed an order at the other Crocolisks before sinking into the mud. It's 50 meters below us, hiding in the deep earth until we go away, Tian informed Carl. Should we dig it out? Carl asked. That would be hard. Its earth magic is as good as mine, and it will just start running away if we try. Tian sighed. Splashing announced the departure of the rest of the Crocolisk tribe, leaving only one defeated-looking specimen, with Kara still standing on his back. The creature gave Carl a pleading look, while Kara looked immensely proud of herself. She had tamed a Crocolisk for riding. Sort of. The moment that anything else got near it, the creature attacked. But it had given up on trying to get Kara dislodged, as the Chaos Badger wasn't actually harming it. You can't keep it, Carl informed her in a dry tone. Fine, fine, Kara replied, then hopped off the creature and activated Void Blast. Aimed at its backside, to chase the Crocolisk off into the swamp. They were dangerous monsters, but they were native to the swamps, and nobody saw much of a reason to eliminate them all. They had taken down more than half of the tribe during this attack, leaving over a dozen bodies in the water in under 2 minutes. That was enough to appease the Black Dragon's need for balance, and it should reduce the Crocolisk tribe's need for food, and the resultant attacks on the Naga villages. Do those count as beasts for your golem summoning? Lotus asked once the fight was definitely over. Carl checked his summoning options, and then called a pair of totem-rank Crocolisks out. They were only slightly larger than the overlords, not nearly as impressive as the matriarch, which was a higher-level magical beast, and not an option for the golem spell. Lotus smiled and climbed up the golem's leg to sit on its back between the ridges. Crocolisks are excellent swamp transports. They can walk on soft mud and swim very well, she declared. Kara took a spot on the other one, sitting upright in the same position that Lotus was, and Carl chuckled in amusement. They had been giving each other strange ideas again. Are we ready to move out again? Tessa asked from Thor's back. The village was only a kilometer away, and they were watching the group from the walls, ready in case the team of strangers wasn't any more friendly to Naga than they were to the beasts of the swamp. An enemy of your enemy wasn't always your friend. Let Remy lead the group again. They'll likely respond better to her than to anyone else. Carl agreed. Chapter 10:14, Bath Time. They took up the same formation as before, except that Ray was gone. She had retreated into her space and was sorting through her treasures and blood supply. Is it time for an advancement bath? Carl asked the intensely focused spider. I think it is. I've got everything that I need. I just need to adjust the balance for my new species so I don't end up with weird abilities. She agreed. Remy led the group to the village walls, expecting a warm reception. But they were greeted with a faint sense of hostility and suspicion. Strange shaman, what brings you to our village? The guard asked. The village to your south said that you had a Crocolisk infestation. We came to help you with them. As you can see, we eliminated many of them on our way. Remy replied. There was a pause and then the gates opened. A deep brown and green Naga shaman princess at the overlord rank stood in the open gates, glaring at Remy. Oh, cat fight! Kara cheered from the back of her new ride. Remy gave the princess a polite nod, then smiled. Leader SS Amanth, it is a pleasure to meet you. She began. The princess reluctantly gave a small bow, but Carl could still feel the hostility. Thank you for your intervention, Your Majesty. I'm afraid that our village has suffered greatly from the repeated attacks of the Crocolisk matriarch. She replied. Remy decided not to press them. As Hawk said, the edge of the swamp was only 10 kilometers away. They could just turn west and go look for more targets, as it was only early afternoon. Instead, Remy took out a monarch rank cleansing potion in a decorative glass bottle and extended it to the princess. A first meeting gift from me to you, she declared. A guard came forward and took the bottle, while the rest of the Naga along the wall watched with great curiosity. Their village was in bad shape, but they wouldn't just accept a hostile takeover by another royal lineage. Not while their current princess was alive. The princess examined the gift and began to relax. It obviously wasn't the best that Remy could make, but the system said it was made by her. A polite gift that said Remy wasn't trying to insult them, but also wasn't going to cower before them. We have more hunting to complete today. It has been a pleasure making your acquaintance. But I am afraid we must be on our way, Remy declared, then used minor water control to close the gates before turning away. Thor grumbled, unhappy about more walking in the swamp, but he immediately turned west and began moving. Lotus hummed happily as she used her vines to pick nearby flowers from the crocolisk's back during their trip. The swamps had all sorts of medicinal flowers available, and she wasn't going to let them all pass by without at least collecting a few. Remy had her bodyguards pick ones she didn't have, so she could add them to her swamp. But that was much more practical than the green dragon priestess. Lotus was just making a flower crown out of medicinal plants. They continued for an hour after they reached the grasslands, headed toward the next region where Hawk had reported another anomaly. But Hawk hadn't reported any sort of monster infestation around the anomaly, just the location, and the fact that there were farms in the surrounding area. It was possible that the farmers had already dealt with the monsters from the spawn, and it was just the anomaly itself that was left. Once they were on dry land, Remy retreated to her space. There were no new plants here to find, and she had potions to make. So Carl took her spot at the front, while Thor led the rest of their odd procession through the grass. The group had become heavily reptile-biased, with Remy's bodyguards and the Lamia still active, plus a pair of crocolisk mounts for Kara and Lotus. They fit in well with Thor's behemoth body, but were clearly not native to the grasslands. There is a farm near you. They hid the house in the hill, you'll see it over the next rise. Hawk updated. Carl could already see the soul energy of the farmer in the distance, out in a field tending to something living. It was on their way to the anomaly, so there was no real reason not to stop in and at least get an update on the situation in the region. The farmer whistled as he noticed them, loud enough that Carl could hear it. That brought out a middle-aged trollish woman and a teen boy with a sword in his shaky hands. Everyone, wait here, I will go say hello, Carl instructed, then deactivated his armor spell to leave himself in black pants tucked in his boots and a white silk tunic shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Brother Tion, help him out, Kara instructed as Carl began walking. The tiny fox came out to sit on Carl's shoulder, as Kara had earlier. He was hard to spot among the white and black fur, being Snow White himself, but his bright blue eyes gave him away once they got closer. Carl stopped a comfortable distance from the two trolls and turned his hands palm up to show that there was nothing in them. Greetings. We were passing by and noticed the anomaly in the distance. How long has it been up? We can offer assistance clearing the excess monsters. Carl greeted them. The boy lowered his sword for a moment before remembering that he was supposed to be on guard against thieves and liars, but the woman just gave Carl an amused smile. We don't need help with that old thing. It spawned grassland buffalo, but that was decades ago. We've raised many generations of the beasts since then. Carl chuckled. That's impressive. Normally, the monsters are too crazy to be raised. The woman nodded. If you talk to the old shaman by the strange place, he can explain. But his magic calms them for a time, and that let us breed them. Then the next generation was normal, so we killed most of the others and herded the rest back inside. They don't get old in there, so we always have spares if bad things happen to the trolls' food. That is actually brilliant. I never thought about doing things that way. If they are all tamed now, I will make sure that my people don't attack any of your livestock. We're on a mission from the dragon gods to balance out the monster populations and remove the excess from the anomalies. But it seems your people have already done that here. Carl agreed. The woman smirked and nodded. I came 10 years after the army unit arrived here. Word got back to the big village that they had lots of food and homes built, looking for good wives. And a good trollish woman will box her husband's ears until he becomes a good husband as well. Carl joked. The woman nodded. Exactly. Good husbands make good living conditions. Good wives make good husbands. You are wise to the ways of the trolls. Chapter 10:15. Down by the river. Carl returned to the group and explained the situation. That put a small dent in their plans. It was hard to clear out anomalies when the locals were using them as reserve livestock. Instead of heading for the anomaly, they loaded everyone in the wagon and followed Hawk's directions northwest toward an area that clearly had far too many monsters, and no local farmers. That one should be something that they could fight against. There is a nice spot here by the river. Why don't we call it a day and start hunting monsters in the morning? Dana suggested most of an hour into their trip. That's not a bad idea. We're not trying to speed run the clearance, and with all the changes that we have seen, it would be wise to stop and see if this is stable. Naksha agreed. There was no real advantage to clearing the whole area if it was just going to reset, and the number of anomalies didn't actually go down. A short break before they had to do any more fighting would be good for everyone. They didn't take nearly as many breaks as most groups would in their situation, but that didn't really bother most of them, except on the days when they wanted to just lie around and do nothing. Today was one of those days. They had been on plenty of adventures lately, and they really could use a few down days to just relax. Nobody wanted to burn out, and they had been much more active than nearly any other group of elites that they had met since they had come to the Dragon Isles. There is a really nice stand of trees over there, Ray suggested as they reached the river. It wasn't a huge shelter, like the ones that they would usually choose, But the small poplar trees were enough to hide the parked carriage from long-range observation. That was enough to get them through the night in safety, and then they could go looking for more fights tomorrow. That was enough for everyone in the group, and especially for Ray, who had big plans for the night. If everything went right, she should be able to complete her advancement in the evening, and then she would be joining the fight as a totem-ranked blood destruction demonic spider tomorrow, with a full set of totem-ranked skills and golems. That would absolutely devastate most of the enemies that they had faced so far, and establish her as the strongest sister for at least a week. The thought made Tian laugh. She would probably be the strongest of all the partners for at least that week, as his body wasn't up to sustained use of his skills yet. But he was adapting quickly in this space, especially with all the good food. He wasn't the only one that was confident, either. Kara was certain that she could make totem rank without any real issues, and Butterfly was beginning to awaken from her dreams more often, now that Karl's power had increased to the extent that she had excess energy. The totem rank advancement had been a huge boon for her, as it was finally enough high-quality mana that she could do more than just focus on survival and basic illusions as she dreamed. A little longer and her mind would fully awaken. Once that happened, her powers would be much more formidable, and she could join the rest of the team in fully participating in combat events as well as travel. Thor was doing all the transport now, but with her solid illusions, Butterfly was certain that she would be able to do at least that well. She could even make flying mounts for everyone. But in her half-awake state, it finally occurred to her that she needed to pick a name. The Carl had asked her that once before, but she was sleeping. She couldn't introduce herself as some random butterfly when she had already made friends with these people in her illusionary world. It had to be a good name, something suitable to her species, but still easy enough to pronounce for others. Her first thought was the sound of crystal sliding down a silver surface, but that wasn't a noise that other species could make. Maybe something that had to do with music? The language of the glasswing illusionary butterfly was entirely musical notes created by their crystalline bodies. That made it difficult for her to pick a name, as all the good ones were impossible for others. How could she even explain that the best options were unavailable when nobody else spoke the language? But didn't dragons have the same issue? They picked two names, one in Draconic and one for everyone else. Most species couldn't roar at all, and few could mimic a dragon's roar well enough to pronounce a dragon's true name. So, she could have two names as well. The first would be her favorite sound in the whole world, while the common name would be something easy to remember. Argent. Eris? Lyra? No, none of those were quite right. She needed to come up with a name, but it had to be a good name. Something that she would be proud to introduce herself as. They had Hawk and Thor, Ray, Remy, Kara, Naksha, and Tian. Dana, Lotus, Tessa, and Ophelia. All the names were so different that she couldn't even use them as a reference to pick one for herself. What about Nautila? Since she was found in the shoreline waves of Drod? No, that would just lead to Kara making naughty jokes at her expense. Opal? She could be Opal. The stone shimmered like the reflection of light on her wings. Yes, that would be her name. Opal, Karl's daughter. She had already studied the dwarven and human histories, and that was definitely the proper family name for the daughter of a Karl. Now, she just had to find the perfect time to introduce herself to the others. Maybe after this nap. A little more sleep would do wonders for her mental clarity. Chapter 10:16. Queen of the Damned. Ray settled in for the evening, preparing her bath, as Tian set them up with a shelter for the night. Like the first one he had made, it had a domed roof, but this one had flat sides so that they could more easily hang hammocks across the length. The ladies were suspicious when Ray didn't make an appearance during the camp setup, as everyone knew that she reveled in the chance to decorate their spot for the night. Especially this one, as Tian's tastes ran to a fox's den, and he only made simple smooth stone walls and a rounded roof that looked like the one in the den where they had found him. Eventually, Remy knew that she would have to expose him to dwarven architecture. They loved stone as much as the stone-fur divine fox did, and they were much more decorative in their creation methods. The small building was functional, though. It was totem-ranked magical stone on all sides, so nothing was getting in except through the door, and once Lotus spent a few seconds with her plant growth skills, it looked like nothing more than a small hill. That pleased the little fox. Dens should be hidden from sight for safety. Is there a reason we're making a bomb-proof hidden bunker? Dana asked as they finished the evening's shelter. It makes Tian happy. Karl replied with a shrug. Dana shook her head in dismay and looked at the half-meter thick walls of their shelter. It might be overkill, but the thick stone held its temperature very well, and it was much cooler in here than outside. While they settled in to make dinner, Ray was balancing the contents of her bath with a level of precision that Remy's alchemy students would be envious of. She had used a totem-ranked ogre base, but with hints of hill giant, a dash of crocolisk rescued from the last fight, a large splash of lamia blood, also from the last battle, then a generous sprinkle of crab blood for seasoning. That made the base scent, and a balance of earth, water, and beast-focused energies. Then she added half a liter of the mythic ranked monster blood that the dwarves had procured for her and gave it a stir. That was very close, but it was missing something. Carl, I need an update. Just a splash. She insisted, while rummaging through her stored blood for the seasoning she needed. Ah, there it was. Totem-ranked Lich Lord. That was the dark element blood that she needed. Carl gave her some new blood now that he was totem rank with an advanced bloodline. That added the spice Ray was hoping for, but it took a bit more Lich Lord to offset the chaos element of Carl. With the balance now perfect, Ray had Remy cast unobtrusive behemoth on her and hopped into the pool of blood. Now that the pool of blood was massive compared to her body, like a human in the Golden Divine Academy swimming pool, Ray was absolutely certain that she had made the correct choice. Her body was processing through the blood at an astonishing rate, and her aura was soaring with the combination of monster, beast, and undead energies. The balance was just right, slightly demonic, but mostly shadowy and bestial. The extra dose of totem-ranked Carl was an interesting high note in the energy flow, as it was somehow both monstrous and bestial at the same time, with notes of dragon and void. The extra energy types were adding more possibilities to her advancement, but Ray knew just what she wanted. There was only one universal truth that really mattered to her. Everything in the world should be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. As she worked to integrate the mythic rank energies into her body, Ray felt an icy and dispassionate gaze upon her mind. Instinctively, she knew that it was the true attention of the spider goddess, and she smirked at the divinity. She wanted to see how her offspring were doing. Ray would remind her that she had created the perfect predators, and that one day soon, this particular child of her spiders would be standing before her with pride. The spider goddess seemed amused at the thought that Ray was so determined to become a divine being herself, but the feeling soon faded, and that sense of simply being watched returned. Ray understood, though. The spider goddess loved her children, and waited for one to make her proud. But she wouldn't do anything for them that they could do for themselves. But that thought gave Ray a great idea. All this time, she was using blood to advance, and somehow she had managed to overlook the most obvious of all ingredients. Herself. Ray clipped her underside with one sharp foreleg and let her own ichor mix into the bath. The added source of energy, from the open wound on her abdomen, massively increased the influx of power. However, it also added a hint of herself to the mix, and helped stabilize the energies, which now had overtones of her existing power to them. If she could find a more powerful spider species for her next advancement, that might be even better. But so far, it hadn't happened during their travels. Her power had casually soared past the breakpoint of totem rank, and she could feel the totemic blessing forming, but she wasn't done with the bath yet, and Ray was certain that she could get even more out of it before the process finished and her body reformed. So, by the time that she stopped, the blood was completely gone, and her body had been scrubbed clean. Then, like the crabs that she had added to the mix, Ray molted her outer shell and stepped free from her past with a whole new body ready to face her totem-ranked future. Evolution complete. New skill gained. Hemotoxic strikes. Wounds from physical strikes inflicted by the user will not heal naturally. New racial skill gained. Queen of the Damned. Intact targets of blood destruction can be temporarily raised as blood golems, undead constructs. Vulnerable to lacerate, bleed, and holy effects. That was a lovely new skill. She could make them explode, then gather the pieces back together to attack their allies. It was devious, insidious, and positively hilarious. Chapter 1017. But what if we did? The evening passed quietly for everyone, as Ray worked to recover from her bath and harden her new shell. The visual changes were subtle, just a bit more shine to her chitin. But the composition was completely different, with the innate blessing of the totem-ranked beasts imbued into every cell. That explained to her why the effect couldn't be dispelled. The divine blessing became part of you, not an effect that was placed upon you. So, it couldn't be removed from you any more than another body part. Tion was confused by the concept. He was born this way, so he had never considered that others could just adapt and gain the innate blessings of the stonefur divine fox species. The Carl had done it, but he was a strange creature to begin with, and Ray was a spider. Tion thought that he understood how spiders worked, at least until he saw Ray advance. They used to have one that guarded the door to the den, while his mother lured prey for it to eat. But now they had another totem-ranked group member, and a powerful one. Ray was a bit of a scary sister, but she was an excellent fighter, and she had her golems to help her. Totem-ranked golem creatures were overpowered. Then Tion turned his attention to the Dana Mage. She also had golems. There should be some way to make her more powerful as well so that she could make stronger golems. She was what they called a monarch, but it wasn't that far from overlord. If she became an overlord, her golems would be strong enough to guard the door to the den, like his mother's spider had. Tion gently brushed his tail with a comb made of earth magic as he pondered that dilemma. If only his mother were here, she would know how to do it. No, he couldn't get lost in reminiscing about things that were no longer possible. He would have to come up with the answer himself. Why are you trying to buff our Dana Mage? Hawk asked curiously. To watch the door of the den, of course. Tian explained. Hawk thought about the possibilities. Maybe we aren't feeding her well enough? Humans are strange, you have to feed them very specific diets because they can't digest all the good stuff directly. I think Sister Remy was working on something. Hawk suggested. Tian's ears perked up. Oh, that gives me a good idea. Ray upgrades her bloodline when she has a bath. I have a divine bloodline. So, if we get Remy to make a potion with some of my fur, and then soak the Dana mage in it, shouldn't she advance? Hawk paused. Would that work? We are going to have to ask Sister Remy when she wakes up. Ray watched her two idiot brothers making plans, and shook her head. Evolving like I do has side effects. Aren't you worried about what it will turn the Dana mage into? Tian fluffed up happily. If it's made with fox fur, wouldn't she just get cuter? Ray mentally frowned. It was scary that the little fur ball made sense. Dana would be cute with fox ears. So, when Remy woke up in the morning, they began to plot. Remy knew the process to force an advancement when you were at the bottleneck. Dana wasn't even close to that point, but the concept was the same. You could flood them with improved mana quality and force the body to adapt. Then you needed to heal it to seal that gain in. But that would be pointless if their body could only make a tiny advancement at a time, like breaking a bottleneck. So they would need a catalyst. That was where Tian's fur came in. If she added a divine lineage beast's fur to the mix, it might make the imbiber a bit more fox. But the potion should also give her a bit of the little brother's ability to store increasingly large amounts of mana. Out of all of them, Tian was already the most powerful magic user, though his tiny body hardly held any mana at all, and he was still learning to use ambient mana from the book that Remy had given him. But Dana already knew that trick. So, with some work in her lab, Remy was certain that she could come up with something that was both safe and effective, but it would have to be tailored to the user. Kara helpfully snipped a bit of Dana's hair with her claw as she lay in the hammock with Dana in between her and Carl. That should match with Tian's fur to make the potion. But they had limited time to plan. Soon, Carl would be up, and he would definitely reprimand them for wanting to experiment on his Dana mage. If they didn't want to get lectured, they needed to work fast. Fortunately for them, Thor was still sleeping. He was terrible at keeping secrets, and Remy knew that he had a whole moral system that seemed designed to take all the fun out of experiments. So, she started on the potion right away, using the past experiments that she had done with various forms of mana recovery potions, as well as healing, stamina, and recovery potions. Remy knew what almost all the ingredients she had available did, though there were possibly additional uses for some of them that she hadn't found useful yet. So, it was with great confidence that she produced a glowing silver potion an hour later. It sparkled with embedded runes and the holy magic leaking from the sample of Tian's fur that had been dissolved into it. But the fancy appearance shouldn't hurt anything. Now, she just needed a good way to get Dana to drink it without making anyone suspicious. If they tipped off the others and it didn't work, they might not let her have another chance to upgrade the Dana mage. Chapter 10:18. Upgrade the Dana mage. Kara was the one who came up with the solution. They would borrow Dana from the hammock and move her into the Dana space where they could be alone. With everyone else sleeping, they could wake her up just enough to get her to drink the potion, and then wake up Carl to give him the good news once the whole process was completed and the evidence of their methodology was hidden. The first part of the plan went off without a hitch. The Dana mage was extracted from bed, moved to her bed in the Dana space, and then gently shaken awake by Remy, who presented her with the potion. It's a health tonic. Try it and tell me how it tastes. The Naga insisted. That was far from the strangest request that Dana had been woken up for, so she simply downed the potion, then tilted her head and pursed her lips, trying to understand the flavor. That was where it all went wrong. The power in the potion was overwhelming, with a huge dose of Tian's totem rank essence, and a powerful overlord rank base. Dana's body began to flood with mana, but it was too fast. The potion didn't push out the old mana on its own, and by the time that Dana realized and started to do it on her own, her skin had started to split, and Remy had to bring out the healing totems to help her keep up. The epic guard was active, so she would have void body active on her. But if Dana was taking that much damage this early in the process, things were definitely not working the way that she had envisioned them. Tian, we need assistance. You have healing, right? Remy asked. She had healing totems, and if she needed, healing splash. But neither of those was a high-output healing spell. The tiny fox came out of his space and began to pull external mana to focus Sacred Heal on Dana. That stopped the damage, and surrounded her body in a golden glow of healing magic as she took constant magic from the effects of the potion. Black energy from void body mingled with healing energy, flooding the tiny world with power, but the potion's effect was still peaking. Dana's power was definitely upgraded, flowing out at a distinctly overlord-ranked quality, but if they had to wake Lotus to resurrect the Dana mage, they were going to be in so much trouble. So, they kept at their healing efforts, unaware that Carl was now very much awake and aware of what they were up to. He could feel what happened in the tiny world, and this was definitely not a subtle action, with Tian pouring totem ranked healing on Dana at his maximum output. The effect of the potion began to fade, and Tian was finally able to end his healing efforts, though Remy kept her totems up as a precaution. As Dana recovered enough to be able to do more than focus on survival, she turned a glare on Remy that made the Naga consider that her good intentions might not have been as highly appreciated as she had anticipated. New skill gained, Fox Charm. Fox Charm passive skill. Grants the user an alluring appearance that attracts others of all species. Increases chances to bargain, negotiate, and induce possessive feelings toward the user. The notification startled Dana, but didn't change the glare she was giving the errant Naga. Congratulations on making Overlord. Remy asked hesitantly. And? Dana asked. And, I'm deeply thankful for the research data on the new potion. And perhaps you would like to apologize for giving me a strange thing that almost killed me without warning me first? Dana asked, her tone harsh. Oh, that too. It wasn't supposed to cause any damage. I will have to work on that part. Perhaps some more runes for slow release. Dana's glare said that was not the right answer. You're supposed to be sorry for almost killing your friend, not looking for ways to improve your potions right now. Carl informed her. Oh, good point. Wait, how long have you been up? Long enough. Now apologize to Dana and make sure there is no lingering damage. Remy hugged Dana, and then handed her Tian as a comfort fluff and distraction. Sorry, I got carried away with my idea to make an advancement potion. I should have thought more about your safety and feelings. Remy said softly. Dana petted the back of the little fox's head and then smiled at the Naga. Carl caught you, didn't he? But how did this good little brother get caught up in your scheme? Dana asked. I'm the best magic user, and because I have a divine bloodline, my fur is great for helping other creatures advance. Tian explained as he nuzzled into her hand, looking for more head pats. Brother Thor was so right about the pats. Remy is getting more tricky. She knows it's impossible to be mad at you for long. Dana sighed. But it was a good potion. It made you even cuter. Tian added. It changed my appearance? Dana stood and went to the attached restroom to look in the mirror. She still looked like herself, but a bit more flawless, a bit more fair, and her eyes seemed to have a slight tilt to them now that gave her a lazy and seductive resting appearance. Personally, I was hoping for you to get earth magic, but no luck. Tian informed her as Dana examined her new face. Dana read over the details of the skill notification. A seductive face wasn't always a good thing. Fortunately, she had a beast form to fall back on if her face attracted too much attention. I think it's about time that someone talked to Remy about the possible side effects of giving strange things to others. I'm glad that I'm cute like a fox, but having an alluring appearance can be very troublesome for a lady. Dana informed the little fox. Tian was confused. Isn't being cute always better? When you grow up, you will understand. Being cute is good, but there are many people that you don't want to notice your appearance. Bad people with bad intentions. Chapter 1019, Tian the Persuasive. Tian wasn't sure quite what she meant, but the Dana mage was a big sister and big sisters knew things. Moving to the tiny world had been a good call on their part, as the commotion hadn't been noticed by anyone but Carl. But now that they were done, they could go and chase Lotus out of bed to make a celebratory breakfast. Oh, good idea. I want blueberry pancakes with honey. Tian declared. It's Dana's celebration. Remy reminded him. The fox gave her his best pleading look, and Dana laughed. All right, we can have the breakfast you want, but you have to be the one to wake Lotus up to cook it. You will find that my cooking skills are somewhat lacking in comparison. Tian laughed as she carried him out of the tiny world and placed him on the hammock that Lotus and Ophelia were sharing. Tian immediately rubbed up against Lotus' face, and her eyes shot open. She had been sound asleep a half-second ago, but the soft fox fur was very different from Ophelia's fur, and Tian smelled like holy magic after his morning exertion. After training in the seminary academy, the smell of holy magic in the morning always got clerics right out of bed. The dorm matrons would use switches made of holy magic to chase you out of bed if you slept in, and nobody wanted to be on the receiving end of that. Even Tessa and Naksha had been dragged from slumber by the lingering aura of holy magic. What's going on and why does Tian smell like holy magic? Tessa asked sleepily as she changed from night wear to her usual robes. Dana placed a hand on either of Remy's shoulders and pulled the lamia forward. Yes, why does Tian smell like healing magic? You should explain to the group. She insisted. Carl, help. Remy pleaded. I think you're stuck this time. I'll rescue you after. Remy shifted uncomfortably. I made a potion to help our Dana mage reach Overlord rank, and it was a bit more potent than expected. So, it took a bit of healing to prevent damage. But look, we have an Overlord Dana. Remy insisted, then twisted out of Dana's grip to push the mage in front of her for examination. Tessa chuckled at the Naga trying to hide, when it was clear that her potion had more issues than being just a bit too powerful. But Dana was an overlord, so it wasn't a complete failure. If she had all the details, she would certainly be much more upset with the Lamia's lack of common sense. But she was only half awake, and Dana looked unharmed. Well, now that we have an advancement, I suppose that we should have a celebration meal, Tessa replied, as she realized that was the reason to wake them up so early, and for giving Tion to Lotus. Everyone knew that she wouldn't say no to anything that the fox requested as long as he was willing to suffer her attention. Carl wrapped an arm around Dana and picked her up to rest against his side. Why don't we move this to the tiny world? There is much more room to celebrate in there. We can have a golem watch the door, he suggested. Speaking of golems, where is Ray? She's usually around first thing in the morning, Tessa asked. She also had an advancement last night, and she's asleep right now. The advancement baths take a lot out of her, so we're letting her sleep, Carl explained. Lotus turned her full attention on Carl. Ray made it to totem rank? Did she change a lot? Carl nodded. Yeah, I suspect that it was the reason that everyone got so worked up about advancing Dana. But I will wait for Ray to be fully mobile again, so that she can show off her new power level without spoilers. Carl opened the tiny world's entrance, and Remy assigned her bodyguards to watch the shelter. This close to the swamps, it shouldn't be too shocking to anything passing by if they sensed Naga by the river. Lotus was happy to make all the fancy ingredients for breakfast and show off her new food creation skills for Tion, who was quickly covered in flour after an attempt to help with the cooking. The lack of opposable thumbs made it difficult for him, but Lotus was happy to have him as a mascot on the counter as she made the blueberry pancakes that the little fox wanted. Is there a reason for the rush to make Dana an overlord? Tessa asked Remy as they waited for the food to be ready. Remy shrugged. She was still a monarch, but Ray reached totem. Plus, we had the ingredients since she's a human mage, and Tion's fur would be compatible. I considered how to do it for dragon priestesses, but I don't have the ingredients that we will need. I might be able to do it for Ophelia as well, but I need to adjust the recipe. So, basically, just because you could? Alright, I believe that I understand how things happen now. But I don't think that you're going to make friends if you keep turning out potions that risk killing the imbiber for the chance to advance. Tessa chastised her, while Remy looked suitably contrite. Well, not here in the Dragon Isles. If we sent the recipe back to the Golden Dragon Nation, they'd start giving it to everyone who hit a bottleneck. Ophelia retorted sarcastically. Carl shrugged. He had seen firsthand what people would do for even one more rank. If there was a chance for royals to become monarchs, and especially for monarchs to become overlords, they would definitely risk giving them an experimental potion. They'd do it with healers present because those people were all valuable assets to the nation. But they would definitely do it. I am going to have to set an alarm to wake me up before you do something crazy again. To think that you even dragged young Tion into your plans. Thor admonished. Hey, some of this was his idea. Remy countered, but Thor wasn't buying her excuses. Tion was much more sensible than that. Dana smiled. You know, that's not a bad idea. I don't mean this potion, that's too risky. But I'm sure that Remy has something that will help grow an elite's potential to a lesser degree that she used as the base. I can send a message to Ahmad, and let him know that we have something helpful for him. Carl chuckled. How about I send him the message instead? In fact, I can send him one of the potions as well. Chapter 10:20. It's a feature. Everyone turned to look at Carl as he finished speaking. How exactly would you send a potion to the leader of the Golden Dragon Nation? Tessa asked, breaking the silence. Well, I do have a portal spell, and I'm a totem with a massive mana pool. It shouldn't be hard for me to open a small portal back to the capital. Then I just pass the potion to someone trustworthy, and send him a system message to come get it. Dana flicked him on the forehead. And you don't think that a random totem showing up in the capital will cause absolute chaos? Carl smiled and Ophelia began to laugh. How does that saying go? It's not a bug, it's a feature? The berserker joked. Kara nodded happily. It would be hilarious to go back and make them panic. Actually, they could send Ray and she could check on her baby rogue and visit Neil as well. We could send Dana in disguise. If there is a spy present, they might report that one of the exiles showed up again and that could cause troubles for the people in charge. Tessa suggested. Dana smiled and activated beast form, then paused as the expected furry stripes didn't appear on her hands. Instead, she was bright white and had longer fur than she remembered. Ooh. See, I knew that she would be pretty. Tion cheered. Tessa chuckled and took out a mirror from her inventory to show Dana her transformed appearance. Under the effects of beast form, she was no longer a cat demon and she was nearly identical to Carl in pattern. This time, the spell had turned her into a fox demon complete with long fluffy ears and a fox-shaped head. She no longer got larger with the spell and thought she might have actually gotten more slender. But it was her voice that startled her the most. Well, that is unexpected. I thought that the spell was said after you used it the first time. She began, then paused as her musical tone reached her sensitive ears. Fox charm is powerful, Tion bragged. And how am I supposed to interact with people when my voice has become a magical seduction technique? Dana asked. The little fox shrugged. Just threaten them with the Carl if they get handsy. You think this is funny, don't you? I was actually happy with how I looked. Dana snarled, but it came out as a gentle pout. Tion held up his paws in defeat. Got it. Not funny. You still make a beautiful fox, though. I wonder if you can go all the way with a stronger skill and become an actual fox? I bet your tail would be super fluffy. Dana shook her head in dismay. She was wearing robes still, so her tail was trapped underneath. And it was super fluffy. Once she swapped outfits, they would adapt to her form having a tail. But for now, she could keep that information to herself. Well, if we're not doing anything else, why don't I take Ophelia with me? She can do the job of bodyguard without me needing to call golems. Dana suggested. Ophelia laughed. I think that you've forgotten one vital fact. A werbear and a fox demon would attract way more attention than just showing up as ourselves. After all, it was Carl that was actually banished, we just chose to join him in his exile. So, technically, we're not breaking any rules by going back for a visit. Remy quietly handed the berserker a basket full of potions along with a notebook, and Ophelia put it in her inventory for safekeeping. Both Dana and Ophelia changed back to their human forms, and Ophelia stretched her body and used to being in this shape. Carl, you might as well open the portal. We've got 10 minutes before breakfast. In and out. She insisted. All right, I know the perfect place to send you to. Carl agreed. Carl focused on the first place that he had met Neil, the Inquisitor's office in the capital. Then he opened the portal and laughed as an irate overlord-ranked rogue hurled a dagger at him. Good morning, old friend. We have a present for Totem Ahmad and we were hoping that you could pass it to him. Carl began as Neil glared at him. You damned near gave me a heart attack. Do you know what it's like to have a totem-ranked monster open a portal into your office? Especially when the office in question is supposed to be warded against travel skills. Technically, I have never had an office. But I get your point. Good reflexes though, the skill hit right on the throat. Carl replied. Neil sighed and stepped through the portal, then looked around the main room of the replica guild house in the tiny world. Where are we? He asked. A separate space I learned to make with a skill. But currently I am traveling with these lovely ladies through the Dragon Isles. We just so happened to come up with a potion that will help trigger breakthroughs if you're at a bottleneck and thought it should be shared. Carl explained. I can demonstrate if you want. Do you want to be a totem? Remy asked hopefully. Neil smiled at the Naga's best pleading face. Why does that sound like a threat? No, I would rather not be a totem at the moment with all the chaos that's happening at home. Lotus brought over a stack of pancakes and a coffee for their visitor, then recruited Ophelia to bring the platter to the table they had set up in what was the store in the real world. Let's sit and talk. Have things gotten bad since we left? Carl asked. Neil sighed as he sipped the coffee. You could say yes. But also no. There have been 4 more unexpected totem rank advancements in other nations since you left. But there has also been another in the Golden Dragon Nation. Worse from a political standpoint anyhow, it's another elite from the younger generations. I think that you know her, actually. Lady Othello. Now there's a huge argument over whether she should be the next head of the church as she's a paladin and not a cleric, but she's the most powerful member of the clergy. However, every time someone tries to force her, they get zapped by that damnable sword she carries everywhere. I don't know what spell is on it, but you can't try to physically force her to go anywhere. Carl chuckled. It's supposed to punish perverts who attempt to grab her with lustful thoughts. It might be a side effect, misinterpreting their desire for her to be in charge as desire for her. Neil nodded, then frowned. How do you know about the sword? Dana smirked at the rogue. He made it. Ophelia stacked her plate as the last of the food came out and gestured with her fork. Are you sure you don't want to be a totem? It would make your job easier. And then you could try using Remy's potions on one of the clerics. If they don't die, they can take over the leadership role. She suggested. Neil sighed and stuffed his face with pancake to give himself a moment to think before answering. These are excellent, by the way. But no, I will stay at Overlord as the head Inquisitor for now and then advance later. The power level on the whole continent is slowly increasing, and within a few years I suspect that I might break through to totem rank naturally. He sighed. Chapter 1021, Meeting with Neil. A few seconds passed in silence as everyone digested that new information, then Neil smiled. Where's my favorite spider? I would assume that since her bonded partner has reached totem rank, she has as well. The Inquisitor asked. Carl nodded. Indeed she has, though just last night. She's still sleeping off the advancement, but we thought it would be better for everyone if we left the potions and recipes on your desk instead of going to see Ahmad himself. Neil chuckled. He's been moved to the Imperial Palace and that's protected better than anywhere else on the continent from portals and teleportation type skills. He's good friends with the new king and has been for some time. But he was actually moved closer so that they could brainstorm ways to change the nation. That had everyone's attention. You see, Ahmad has the idea that if we can properly mobilize all these new awakenings from the last 2 intakes, we can completely overhaul the nation's production facilities. Advanced technology combined with magic has already proven to be every bit as effective as the traditionally made magical items. At least in some ways. Explosive rounds for artillery have proven to be highly inefficient, using more mana than just putting the mage in a helicopter and letting them bombard the battlefield. Same with magical bullets for guns. The overall effect of that one was pretty good, but in practice it's better to just let the mages do mage stuff. Plus, magical barriers make the bullets essentially useless anyhow. So there's no need for both at the same time. But what really took off was the new bulldozers. Some mage got the great idea to enchant the blade with earth magic, and it made clearing solid stone with heavy equipment as efficient as moving clay. The first construction projects it was put on are months ahead of schedule. Carl chuckled and Dana winked at the assassin before explaining. Here, the demons use earth and fire magic to make entire cities. The dwarves use earth magic to carve out whole mountains, and they can make a skyscraper in a matter of days, not months or years. It's absolutely brilliant as long as you don't think too deeply about the engineering behind it. She explained. Neil nodded in understanding. Yes, I suppose that just letting people make an entire building out of what looks like a single concrete pour with no reinforcement would be very concerning to anyone who knows more about structural engineering than earth magic. Carl realized they had completely missed the important parts of their concerns. How are things with the giants? He asked. Neil shrugged. Not bad. They retreated after the last major battle and they're back within their own borders. Once they realized that the full push on the capital had failed and that their infiltrators had all been flushed out, they gave up on the war plans. Of course, part of that was the death of their new leader and the need for the mountain giants to elect a new chieftain. But the war is officially over and we're back to nothing more than tense relations with everyone else. There have been a few more dungeon spawns as well, and that's not helping anyone's nerves. The stabilized dungeons have proven to be not only the fastest way for elites to advance, but an incredible source of loot and raw materials for the continent. Fortunately, it's all been commander rank and lower instances opening, so we haven't had a power race in one particular area, but the Golden Dragon Nation now has 3 commander rank dungeons and 1 awakened. Ironically, the awakened rank dungeon opened 50 meters from the walls of the academy. Can you imagine that? All these newbie elites from the latest intakes training, and they've got a dungeon right there waiting for them after their first advancement. Even better, anyone from commander or weaker ranks can enter it once a week, and it's set up for a 20-person attempt. It's perfect for team building exercises, and the groups are large enough that multiple classes can pick groups of 2 or 3 to go and work with random teams from other specialties. Lieutenant Rita, Carl's old advisor, has been put in charge of the schedule for the dungeon, as those who don't get picked to go from their class work can sign up for a pickup group instead. She's excelled in the role, and the classes that she teaches on cooperative combat are a student favorite. That was all good news to Carl, but everyone else had strange looks. Did you say the last 2 intakes? Tessa asked. Neil nodded. The intake ceremony was 2 weeks ago. The second since we've had the new methods of awakening elites. This one was just as successful as the last one, with over a third of the entire population of basic school graduates gaining the warrior class. I don't know what we're supposed to do with such an imbalance of warriors, but there is an incredible influx of mages as well. The Red Dragon cleric began counting on her fingers and frowning more deeply. The math just doesn't add up. She muttered. Neil shrugged. I have heard there are strange things on this continent, and a bit of time distortion in random areas wouldn't be the strangest thing that I have ever heard of. So you might not have experienced the whole flow of time. Carl smirked and poked Dana. We almost missed your 18th birthday. We should find out what today's exact date is and make a cake. Neil lifted his wristwatch, then frowned at it. That's the weirdest thing I have ever seen. He muttered. The watch was a quality mechanical watch in a protective leather case. But while it had displays for the day and month, they were blurry, impossible to read. Well, now we know how to determine if we're in an area with a time anomaly. We just need to buy a watch. Carl joked. But for Remy, there was a more urgent concern. She had potions for the new academy students, and they were supposed to have been delivered before the year started as a surprise. Take these with you as well. They're all for the academy. Neil laughed as she stacked crates of small vials, then placed them in his office. Hopefully, the open portal is keeping this area in sync with home, or someone will be very mad at me for slacking on my work. He sighed. In that case, we will see you again soon. Ray will want to visit you and her baby Rogue once she's stabilized. Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today.